Welcome back to the channel of truth, trust, and transparency. Today, I'm breaking down another one of your viewer questions. We're taking a break from the deal reviews. I got this one from someone that's been watching for an incredibly long time, so I thought, why not show them a little bit of respect? The least I could do is answer the question. Bit of a long one. Stick with me. Let's run through it. I know there's going to be some value in there for you guys, but before I dig in, remember, to the person whose question this is, and to all you guys watching, not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I do not hold a AFSL. I am not qualified to be able to give you financial advice. However, if you write in to a question and you ask for my opinion, I'm going to share it and give you some options on what you could do or you could consider, so that when you go to that person that is qualified to give you the financial advice, you can show them those sorts of situations, say, what do you think about this? So important to get that one out of the way before we begin, especially with today, because it's a bit of a long-winded one, but let's run through it anyway. Howdy, Dave. I've been watching your Everything Property podcast for a long time and loving your new daily videos mission. I was loving it at the start. I'm almost at 100 days in. I'm not really loving it too much. It's taken a lot, but I appreciate it. You're going to get there, my friend. You're an asset to the industry. It's a lot of work, and I'm amazed when I log in every evening and you have a new video ready to go. Respect and thank you. Respect and thank you for sending me a message. I really appreciate it. And, if I don't say it, who will? I have a question for you, which I think some people could be in a similar situation and would love to see it covered if you see fit. We are in our early 40s. I'm just going to write down a few key points. Early 40s. We sat on the sidelines for way too long. We have a pretty much paid off PPOR in Sydney, but have a block of land out in the Snowies, a suburb called Calcite. It only has about 100 or so homes, very village suburb for locals with some higher activity in winter for the snowfields. Short-term rental Airbnb. Some activity in summer for fishing too. Its nearby suburb, East Jindabyne, is building up massively and some nice duplexes have been built. However, it is closer to the main part of town. It is a nice parcel of flat land with water connected. Can definitely do duplexes, but will fall short in meters of being able to do a townhouse project of 3. However, you can apparently apply for an exemption if you are close to the minimum of 850 square meters. Question to you is, do we bother with this or sell the land and look to invest closer by? I've been looking at a few other areas for investments and even a holiday home for later down the track. We have a decent deposit saved and are on decent salaries, but nothing crazy. We also are constantly paying rates and water on this land. I am not a tradie, and my concern with doing a project way out there is going to present issues of finding good builders and trades. Our consideration I have thought about is a duplex with a long-term permanent rental and doing an Airbnb on other side and using it ourselves when possible. In saying that, it's a 5-hour drive and I'm not a massive fan of the snow. Prefer a beach setting, but the returns in winter can be massive. The value of land is about $400,000. 400K, hopefully a bit more. Do we forget this opportunity and look to other regions or consider it as land anywhere is hard to come by these days and it could be a big opportunity? Thank you and take care. I asked the question in return because I need a little bit more details. What I asked in return told me PPR is worth about, let's say, 1.6 mil. Now, first and foremost to this particular person, congrats on building out, congrats on paying off the PPR. You're definitely not late. You're in your early 40s. So what I see from here is that you have 2 to 3 property cycles left before you hit that retirement age of, say, 60. Okay? You haven't started investing, but the good news is that between 40 and 60, you've got 20 years. Call it could be 15. I don't really know what you guys do for work. I don't know how long the body can hold up or how much longer you guys can do for work. So you have 2 to 3 cycles. The second is going to be on holiday rentals. Now, do not let ads or the glossy brochures or whatever fool you on holiday rentals. There are huge management costs, holding costs. There is work. If you outsource that work, you also need to pay someone for that. So you need to remember that holiday rentals sometimes aren't always what they're cracked up to be, especially with such a remote area that you're looking at. One of the, I'll give you a little bit of an insight. So on Everything Property, and as you may know, as you may have listened, I interviewed a guy called Neil. Neil is the founder of Future Flip, and they have a Airbnb in Jindabyne actually. And he said one of the challenges with something so far out is the seasonality of it, because you think that you're going to get those bookings during summer and those warm years. You don't really. And the other issue is the changeover and the churn of when someone goes out and being able to send in a cleaner, someone to clean and reset the house. Now, you've only got 50 or 100 houses there. It looked like there was even less. So you have a bit of a risk there if you want to do that Airbnb style, because as you said, you're 5 hours away, so you need to outsource it to someone. And if someone's got to come from Jindabyne, which there are more people in Jindabyne, all the way up to where your property is located, you're going to be paying a lot. That comes out of the holding costs. So you really need to consider, is this something that I want to do, I want to actively manage, I want to invest my time and effort in? Holiday rentals. And the other issue that you have with holiday rentals, when I unpack this with other people, is that, okay, we do this as a holiday rental. Duplex, you've got the idea, but if it was a house, you want to go down there the time that everyone else wants to go down there, which is snow season. So the house can't be booked. The house can't be booked in its peak season, which means the only time that you can book it out is in the off-peak when no one wants to go there, including yourself. You said it was a 5-hour drive and you prefer the beach. So I don't know if the holiday rental idea is great. And personally, it doesn't sound like it's something that you're interested in. If you're an avid snowboarder or skier, definitely. But here, it doesn't really sound like you are. I'm going to make the assumption in terms of deposit save that you have $125,000 saved deposit. You're older, you're 40, I know sort of a joint family income, which is very decent. I'm going to assume you've got about 125 grand. Now you don't have to do this, but this is sort of something that comes to mind for me in this particular situation. We've got a limited time frame. It could be 10 years, it could be 15 years, but if you're in your early 40s, it could be 60 years if we take the Australian retirement age. Let's talk about the land first. Now, you did highlight it, and I ran the feasibility on if you had your land with no mortgage on it, all right? No mortgage on it, which you do, no mortgage on it, and you were to spend about $550,000 to build a house on that, and then to sell it for, say, $1.2 million, which there were a couple online that I saw. Not many, but a couple. The profit of that is going to be less than $400K. Your issue with the duplex idea, the townhouse idea, is in that particular suburb, nobody has done a duplex or a townhouse in the last few years. So you are first to market. This is not a position I like to be in as a developer. I like to come in second, third, after people have set what the price is. Remember, we're not in Jindabyne, we're not in East Jindabyne, we're in a suburb further up and further away, which can be seen as a little bit of an issue if we try to get the prices of East Jindabyne. It's going to be hard for valuations. As you said as well, it's going to be hard to find a builder. Most builders, if there's not a local builder in Jindabyne, if there's no one local and people have to travel, then expect a really big build price on there for someone to go, if it's worth my time, for it to be worth my time and effort, this is what I need to get out of it. Now, you're on the flip side, if there is a builder in Jindabyne, or if there is two builders in Jindabyne, you only have two builders to tender to, and the good chance is that they're going to know each other and they're going to know what each other charges and they're going to price accordingly. The duplex and the townhouse idea, it's not something you are familiar with. It's not something that you, I suppose, would know of. And to me, like, I'll give you the perfect example. If I go to landowner and I say, hey, you know, landowner like yourself, and they've got $1 million, site, and they go, I want to develop it and put 3 townhouses on it. If I'm selling those townhouses for about $1 million each, I'm not making $1 million in profit from that development. The developer is not making $1 million. The landowner who I buy the site off for $1 million makes more than me. So sometimes it makes more sense to sell the land because it costs me. Now, as a developer, I obviously need to buy some land to develop, so I'm not going to make as much as the landowners, but I do still make a profit. So I hope that makes sense in the fact that sometimes you're better off selling because you don't have, you're better off selling because, you know, you don't want to go through one thing. So the risk in terms of building, the risk in terms of prices, the risk in terms of being first to market, the risk being this is your first foray into it, whereas we can cash out quite quickly. And I think there was a couple of examples, and you didn't send me the address, but I think if you got 450K for that, now let's work backwards and say that you had a 50K cost base. The original land was bought, I think it was sub $100,000, assuming that you claimed on your expenses holding the water and the rates as a loss. 50K cost base, which means I've made a $400,000 profit. 200K I keep. 200K I keep fully. The other 200K I have to pay tax on. The other 200K, the tax I need to pay, let's say 45%, because that is a profit that goes on top of what you're currently earning, pushes you into the 45% tax bracket. You have to pay 90 grand in tax. Okay? From 400 grand, it means you're left with 310K. I'm going to plus in 125 to say you have cash of, I'm going to round up and say 450K. Okay. 450 grand in cash. Now, let's just park that for a second. 450K in cash I have after I sell the land. I then have a PPOR. Good thing about the PPOR is it's fully paid off. You need to go back through my YouTube videos and find the video on debt recycling. How you can debt recycle out of your PPR because you've got absolutely nothing on it and use that to purchase investment property. So it's definitely something you should consider and potentially explore. Now, if I want to debt recycle out of $1.6 million, $1.6 million, conservatively, let's bring that up to a 60% LVR. Meaning, I'm going to get a loan for 60% of the value of my property, which equals out to be $1 million. What you can do is go to the bank and say, I've got a PPR. This is what we're earning as a couple. We want to get equity out. You get $1 million of equity out, right? You can then use that $1 million in equity to go. You can then use that $1 million of equity to go out and purchase a commercial property. Now, for rounding up's sake, that will allow you to go out and buy a $3 million commercial property. Commercial property. Here's the thing. Why I would buy a commercial property with this, because remember, you're using that $1 million, you're using that $1 million, and you're getting a loan for, say, two odd million, right? You've got some selling costs in there. Potentially you can use some cash to cover you've got some buying costs in there, stamps and all that kind of stuff. Potentially you can use some of your cash to fund that. But you've essentially got a 100% loan against a commercial property. You've got equity, and then you've got the loan. The reason I go commercial at this stage is because, one, I can get into a good size commercial, $3 million. Two, commercial tenant pays all the outgoing, so I don't have any of that headache. Three, Let's give this, at $3 million, you could get a 7% yield, which equals $210,000 in rent. Now remember, I've got $3 million worth of loan. Conservatively, we can go out there and say at 6%, that money's going to cost us 6%. My loan is going to be $180,000 a year. $180,000 in repayments. Repay. Meaning you have $30,000 cash flow per year if you were to buy that. Now, this is what I see, and I would tell you what sequence, if it were me, what I would do. If you sold the land, most people will go out, tell you, sell the land, use up, buy the properties first, but you're using up your borrowing capacity. What I would do instead is I would get my equity release. I'd sit $1 million in the offset against my house. I'd get $1 million, I'd sit that in the offset against the house or in that offset loan. Wouldn't touch it yet, but I'd do the application so that I can use this at any time. Once I do that, then I would sell the land, have the cash available. And this is what I think the plan should look like. And I'm running out of whiteboard space, but bear with me. How are we looking there, guys? Sorry, I'll move that across. To go out and buy four resi properties. Resi, and this commercial property. Commercial. Now, price of those properties is going to be $500K. You'll know from my previous videos that a $500,000 property, it costs you about $100,000 to get into each of those properties. We've got $450K in cash, perfect. We use 100, 100, 100, 100. We have a 50 grand buffer. I go out and I buy these properties. The best part about it then, and you might be close to borrowing capacity, we've got $1 million sitting in the offset. So we can go and do a lease stock loan to buy that commercial property. Again, talk to your accountant, will depend on timing, but then I'd go out and buy the commercial property worth $3 mil. $3 mil. Now, after the first, and guess what? The good news is that you can get all this done in a very short time frame, and that's all you would need to do. Let's look at what that might look like after 10 years and then after 20 years when you retire. I'm going to make the assumption that in 10 years, the properties double in value. Now, a lot of properties can do that very sooner. Can do it in 7 years, 6 years, can do it in 8, can do it in 10, can do it in more, but I'll use 10 as a very conservative average. 10 years, they go to 1 mil, 1 mil, 1 mil, 1 mil. This commercial property now goes up to 6 mil. Yeah. This is the year 2035. Cool. Another 10 years go by. You're out living your life, doing whatever you want. Now you put down 12% deposits. There are going to be some holding costs. But again, it's always harder to own at the start. At 500 grand, you can still get really decent yield. 500 grand, you can still get a 4 or 5% yield. Remember, in 10 years time, that yield increasing 4% is going to cover your mortgage costs. Then once interest rates go from 5 down to 4 down to 3, you'll find that this thing starts to produce a little bit of cash flow. But I'm not even going to calculate, I'm not even going to count any of that cash flow. 10 years time goes by again. 1 year, 1 mil property goes up to 2. Goes up to 2, goes up to 2, goes up to 2. 6 mil, 10 years time, now becomes a $12 million property. 2045, you go, Dave, we've had enough. We want to sell we've had enough. We want to retire. We want to get out of here. This is the time. You're 60. You've now got a property portfolio worth $20 million. This is what you could do. Remember, when I purchased these properties for $500,000, I put down a 12% deposit, which is $60,000. I take that out, I take that away from the purchase price, which means I still have 440K of property, 440K of debt against that property worth $2 million. So, 440K, 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 and my commercial, I've got $3 million worth of debt. Here's the cool part. If I decide to sell 2 properties down, right? Now, my purchase price was 500. You can say I've got 50 grand there, 50 grand on the entry. I've got 100 grand as a cost base. 100 grand, plus the original. So I have a $600,000 cost base. Yeah. $600,000 cost base. I sold it for $2 million, meaning, and I'm just running off the top of my head here, meaning I made a capital gain of $1.4 million. $700,000 of that I keep. 700 grand I need to pay tax on. I pay tax of 315K tax. I pay 315K of tax, meaning I'm left with 385 plus the 700 that I kept tax free. I'm left with $1,085,000 from the sale of one of these. I'm left with, again, I do that times 2, and I'm left with $2,170,000. Here's the good news, kids. Here's the good news. And sorry if this is a little bit longer than what you thought. Remember, I only have $3,900,000 worth of debt. So I can either use this to pay off that, or I can use this to pay off these 2. Let's just say I use this to pay off these 2. No debt, no debt. Yeah? 3 million, I've paid down my 440. I've then paid from my 2.1, I've paid down 2 440s. I've paid down 880 grand of debt. I'm left with 1.29 left, which means this debt goes down to $1.7 million. $1.7 million at a conservative 6% is going to cost me $102,000. And I'm going to say those properties will cost me $15K each in maintenance, repairs, and all those sorts of things, property managers. $15K each. Therefore, I have a property portfolio now of 16 mil. I'm running out of board here. Therefore, I have a property portfolio of 2 mil, and then a 12 mil portfolio. And my costs to hold this property portfolio is going to be 100 plus 30, 132 grand. Here's where it gets juicy. If the $12 million residential property, if the $12 million commercial property has a 6% yield, that is going to be bringing in $720,000. Now, let's just say that rents on the $2 million properties are now, so let's just say these properties are renting at 5% yield. They'll bring in 100 grand each, which is 200 grand. My portfolio brings in $920,000 of rent. It has $132,000 of expenses, meaning when you guys turn 60, you have $788,000 of passive income. Now, you might say, we don't need all that. Cool. After a few years, you can pay down all your debt, wipe down all your debt, pay off that extra 1.7 mil after 2 years, and that will probably look more like $1 million. But that is a sort of step-by-step where my mind goes from your current situation. Let's look at it again. If I was to sell the land off, I part with, after I pay my tax, potentially about $310,000. I pocket that with the cash deposit I've saved for $450. I'm going out of that. I can buy my 4 resis. I also can debt recycle out of my PPOR, and I can buy a $3 million commercial in today's dollars. That doubles in 2045. We've got that portfolio. We sell 2 down. We use the profit that we've made from those 2 to pay off the other 2 and some of the debt on the commercial. And then we have a portfolio that is making us $788,000. Enjoy your retirement. You want that house down by the beach, you can rent one for the weekend, you can Airbnb, you can do whatever you want on that sort of money. Even if you inflation adjust that to whatever 100 grand is going to be in today's value, that, my friend, is a situation or something that you could potentially think about doing. Quite low risk. We don't have to go into development. We don't have to go down that, we don't have to go down that sort of path of that unexplored Airbnb rental model, high turnover, churn and burn, those sorts of things. Just 4 resis, 1 commercial. That's how you would get there. Thoughts, feelings, questions in the comments. Let me know. As always, I'll see you guys tomorrow. I actually enjoyed that one.